morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. I'm Michael Hershman, and I'm moderator for this esteemed panel. I'm glad to be here today, very early in the United States, still dark outside. But welcome all. We do have an esteemed and a very knowledgeable panel to talk about integrity in sports this morning. And I'm not going to go through the entire backgrounds of everyone on this panel because their bios are online. But let me just say a few words about them, beginning with Cláudia Pereira, who is the Secretary of State for Immigration, Integration, and Migration in Portugal. And Cláudia has a doctorate in anthropology and was executive coordinator of the Immigration Observatory from 2017 to 2019. Welcome and good morning, Cláudia. I know that you have a conflict this morning, so we're going to start with you. But first, let me just briefly introduce our other panelists. We have Ms. Azad Kadarov, the Director General of the Directorate for Sports and Social Projects in Kazan, Russia. Good morning, Azad. And I know you were very much involved in the 2018 FIFA World Cup games in your Kazan, in your jurisdiction. We also have a good friend, Franco Frattini. Hello, Franco. Good morning. Franco was foreign minister twice, I think, of Italy, and now is the president of the Italian Supreme Court, and most importantly, from the perspective of our panel this morning, chairs the Sports Integrity Global Alliance. Last but not least, my friend Thomas Stelzer. Thomas, good morning to you.
Good morning, Becky.
Thomas is a career Foreign Service officer from Austria who served as a permanent representative of Austria to the United Nations. And again, most importantly, from our perspective, talking about integrity of sports, he is the Dean of the International Anti-Corruption Academy in Austria. So welcome, Thomas. Let me just say a few words before we jump in. The societal focus on sports integrity, it's not a new phenomenon, but it's changed in the last 10 years. Prior to 10 years ago, when there was a scandal in sports, it was looked at as a one-off, an aberration, if you will. And it was dealt with somewhat in a singular or ad hoc fashion. Whoever was involved, the individuals were punished, and then we went on with business. But beginning with the FIFA scandal, this attitude has somewhat changed. Now we see a greater call for systematic change in sports, particularly in areas related to corruption, doping, fraud, sexual harassment. And we have now a number of international best practices relating to sports. I mentioned earlier, SIGA, the Sports Integrity Global Alliance, has published a best practice guide, as has other organizations. But what I haven't seen much of is collective action. And let me explain what I mean by that. From my experience in Transparency International, we have found in order to address this area of misconduct, whether it be corruption or fraud or otherwise, we need to bring together government, business, in this case, the business of sports, and civil society. Without bringing the three pillars, if you will, of society together, I don't know that we can really accomplish what we want in changing the ethics within the sports community. Collective action has been successful in several different areas. For example, the World Economic Forum has something called PACI, the Partnership Against Corruption Initiative. We have the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. We have the Construction Sector Transparency Initiative. But yet we've seen individual sports organizations deal with misconduct, but no global effort. Frankly, sort of like what we're dealing with in COVID today. There's no global effort to solve this issue. So I'm going to turn first to Claudia because, as I said earlier, Claudia, I know you're on a tight time frame this morning, and I'd like to ask you to talk a little bit about what Portugal is doing from an immigration or migration standpoint vis-a-vis sports, but also Portugal next year will play a major role in Europe. It'll have the presidency of the European Council, and I think we're all hoping that sports will be on the agenda next year. Claudia, welcome to you and good morning.
Good morning. Many thanks for your kind words. And yes, sports will be in the agenda of the Portuguese presidency. And it has been playing a major role in the integration of immigrants and refugees in Portugal. I also like to congratulate and to greet you all. Thank you so much. And for all the people attending, thank you for your time, whether it's night, morning, or evening. I would like actually to start by telling a story that portrays the journey of different athletes with migrant backgrounds. They have achieved success. They have brought glory and fame to Portugal. And I could talk about Nelson Évora or Francisco Coelho, but today I decided to tell you about Naide Gomes. She was born in West Africa, in Saint Thomas and Prince, and she came to Portugal when she was 11 years old and began athletics after jumping 1.5 meters in height in a school tournament, where she even won the boys. She impressed her teacher, and then the teacher advised her to dedicate herself to the sport. She has been revealing herself as a complete athlete. So naturally, she bet the combined races, namely the pentathlon and the heptathlon. Still, it was only after some years, in 2001, that she saw the long process of obtaining Portuguese nationality. See, for some years, she won races, being in Portugal, that will be Portugal's records without being able to show the titles because could not have access to the Portuguese nationality. Finally, as a Portuguese citizen, between 2002 and 2008, she beat the national record of long jump 14 times. And throughout the years, she brought home multiple titles and medals. Today, Naide Gomes is a source of pride and glory for Portugal, for the titles and records she already won, with and without the Portuguese flag. Why am I telling you this story? Because it's not only a story of professional success from hard work, resilience, talent, but it also quite well demonstrates the importance of sport in the integration of migrants in our society. It's the first time that our government has a state secretary for integration and migration, which I'm very honored to assume. And we are developing action with immigrant, Roma, and refugee population. And sport has been playing quite a role in the integration of these populations. I would like to make a contribution to the international community of how sport can and should be used as a tool for social cohesion and inclusion, and to share some projects implemented in Portugal with different stakeholders. As we all know, the practice of sport is a tool of excellence in promoting inclusion because it gives opportunity to participate migrants and refugees in a common activity. Second, to develop a feeling of belonging. And third, to share experiences. So I would show three concrete examples of how sport is developed in the integration of immigrants. First is what we call Choices Program. Choices Program are developed in 103 regions in Portugal, where the children go after school, and usually in regions where there is unemployment. So sport is a key activity that contributes, among others, to avoid deviant behavior and to combat school dropout and failure. So the Choices program created, among other activities, the Choices League in 2011. It is a 7-a-side football competition, and it's a partnership between the Foundation of Football Benfica and another foundation in Atel, where they train referees, leaders, that then these leaders are used to manage conflicts in their own territories. They will have at the outset leadership skills and adequate profile. And I can say that many of them, because they participate in this football project, they highly contribute to the social peace in their regions. So these are distributed among 50 local projects, and there have been more than 1,000 young people, and 80% of them have improved their school results. And this Choices League was placed second in the category of integration of marginalized populations of the European Prize for Social Integration through Sport. So we can say that sport really changed the lives of these young people from being deviant to be active citizens. Secondly, in Portugal, we develop a whole of government approach with migrants, where we combine the entities of the government, the municipalities, and then of civil society. And so we have 3 national centers to support migrants, and then 109 local centers in the interior, seaside, north and south of Portugal. And one of the examples is Corfball Without Borders. So it's the only sport that allows gender equality. So it's played with 5 men and 5 women playing football together. And this allowed the Corfball teams made up of migrants and Portuguese men and women representing the municipalities where they lived. So this is another success story that is really contributed to social cohesion inside the municipalities. And last example, Portugal has recently taken up the challenge of the European Commission to receive non-accompanied minors, refugees from Greece. We have received nearly 50 refugee children, and we will receive more. And the non-formal education as football have been playing quite a role. So we must remind that the children refugees, they are characterized by not having childhood. This is one of the consequences of the war. And in the first day that they arrive in Portugal, a football team in Benfica gives them the, how do I say, the clothes, play football with their own name and a ball. And this has been one of the most effective practices to create a sense of belonging between themselves and with other Portuguese minors. So this is called the Welcome to Football Project, and it has been developing skills of the children when they still don't know how to speak Portuguese. Many of them come from Afghanistan, and so it's through the sport that they make their first integration in Portugal. And this is also to say that we know we still have a lot to do concerning migrants and sports, but we know also have taken a lot of measures to improve. And for that reason, we were considered a champion country from the International Organization of Migration in the implementation of the Global Compact of Migration, because we articulate the government with municipalities and civil society in the integration of migrants. And near the end, I would like to just say that inspiring others by someone else's success and promoting public recognition as Naid Gomes and other athletes as a pedagogical function of demonstrating that it's possible to break cycles of exclusion. And this has been our bet. Unfortunately, I will not be able to stay much longer, but I hope that these living examples are proof of the importance of sports and integration. Our daily life work aims to provide to these children and young people the necessary skills of integration in the Portuguese society, but also to allow them to surpass themselves and to follow their dreams. And so, as Nelson Mandela has once mentioned, sport can create hope where once there was only despair. It is more powerful than governments in breaking down racial barriers. It laughs in the face of all types of discrimination. Let's make that sure that sports keep this leading role in society. Thank you very much and keep safe.
Thank you, Cláudia, for that intervention. I think it's important for us to note that you're changing the lives of so many young people. And at the same time, in teaching them skills and values, you may be changing the future of sports as well. So thank you, and thank your colleagues for that. Let me turn for a moment to Franco. Franco, you have been really on the cutting edge of these issues of integrity in sports with your work as chairman of SIGA, the Sports Integrity Global Alliance, and other work that you've been involved in Italy. Let's talk a little bit about how we address this problem of integrity in sports and your thoughts about what role government, civil society, and sports organizations can play.
Many thanks. It is a great opportunity to be able to speak once again about integrity of sport as chairman of SIGA, but my main job is to be one of the president of the chambers of the Supreme Court of Italy. In my capacity of judge, I'm dealing with mafia. I'm dealing with the infiltrations of mafias and organized crime into the legal economy. So I have the two angles. The first one is my institutional job as a judge, I would say dealing with a growing penetration of mafia groups into the sport business. We have findings also in Italy. We have a good cooperation with other law enforcement departments in other states, in Europe and beyond. And we have, as a confirmation, the recently issued Europol 2020 report focusing on transnational crimes affecting sport, mainly corruption, illegal money transactions, all the money transfer that are covering illegal match fixing worldwide. And all is this my daily job, I would say, to try to find and to eradicate this kind of infiltration. Mainly, I remember in Italy, we had some cases of mafia gangs infiltrating by buying minors football clubs, because if you buy a club, you cover an illegal activity of money laundering behind, I would say, a shadow of respectful activity in the region, in the province, and you try to look attractive for the people, or you are helping young athletes. In reality, you are trying to, I would say, dominate sport competitions, match fixing, and so on and so forth. As a SIGA, I'm experiencing the possibility to get together private and public sector. As you, Michael, rightly said in your introduction, because SIGA's goals are getting together more than 100 participants to our network to cooperate with governments, governmental entities, sport federation, and private sector in order to try to reflect together on how to have, I hope, one day, internationally recognized binding rules on integrity, on prevention, because no doubt, if the private sector resists, is reluctant to engage, if law enforcement bodies don't cooperate between each others at the international level, if the governments are not promoting a new awareness that I would say illegality into sport system is a transnational issue, is not a purely national phenomenon involving one or the other sport club, but it is a global issue requiring a global response. This is what the governments have to do. We need leadership, we need to raise awareness, we need to involve the private sector, and I hope we need to use the modern technologies, because I speak as a judge, but if you don't make a full use of the modern technologies, including cyber technologies, it's very difficult to detect illegal match fixing that is done through cyber international networks based in some, I would say, safe havens, and is necessary to track, to detect, and to destroy by making full use. And in the private sector, if each and every athlete, each and every sport club feels morally obliged to cooperate, to denounce, to speak to the authorities if there is a perception something wrong is going on, we would be much stronger than if only count and rely on a top-down approach. We do want a bottom-up approach coming from the civil society, coming from those that love sport, clean practice. In that way, the governance, maybe I would say later, when having possibilities like the government of Portugal to be the presidents of EU in the next semester of the rotating EU presidency, or Italy while chairing the next G20 presidency in next year, we would be more able to translate all those ideas into deeds, into concrete action. This, for the moment, is my opinion. Then I will be more detailed on some concrete proposals.
Thank you for that, Franco. And you're quite right. International bodies like the G20, like the European Council, European Union, have a critical role to play in trying to improve the values and ethics within sport. Let me now turn to Azat. Azat, you have a program, I believe, called CAP that we'd like to hear a little bit more about, trying to improve, again, the values and integrity in sports.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and depend on the time. So thank you for this great opportunity to meet you. Unfortunately, online, much more better to be offline, of course, to speak each other, to shake the hands. But now the situation, it is what it is. So thank you very much for our colleagues from Portugal for hosting this European football bubble in the May and June. It was great entertainment for everybody after a few months lockdown. So before I'm going to speak about the KAP, let me briefly share the situation what is in Russia with pandemic. So now we have, let me say, second wave. as everywhere. So we have more than 25,000 cases per day. It's really 2 times more than it was during the first wave, during the springtime. But anyhow, we had stopped all sport activities during March, April, and May. And then beginning from June, we started different type of sport activities in our country. Of course, the situation depends on the region in Russia, and some regions more open, some regions more close. But anyhow, now let me say everything more or less, if we can say right now like this, on the track. So we have some physical activities in Russia. We have some competitions we host in Russia. Just recently we host some European championships and some cups, different international tournaments, and also Russian athletes go to the foreign countries, for European countries, to participate in different competitions. So hopefully this terrible pandemic situation will come to the finish. Hope everyone, and we can come back to the normal life, normal physical activities, normal sport life. So coming back to the KAP, Kazan Action Plan. Yes, and just a few years ago, we hosted in Russia, in Kazan, this big event. It was really a nice meeting, nice discussion, nice decision, and let me say it was nice Kazan Action Plan, which was approved during this meeting. We support the 5 actions as catalyst for multi-stakeholder cooperation at the international and national levels. And let me mark this, elaborate an advocacy tool presenting evidence-based arguments for investments in physical education, physical activity, and sport. Develop common indicators for measuring the contribution of physical education, physical activity, and sport to prioritize CDGs and targets. Unify and further develop international standards supporting sport ministers' interventions in the field of sport integrity in cooperation with the international convention against doping in sport. So the next is conduct a visibility study on the establishment of a global observatory for women's sport, physical education, and physical activity, and develop a clear housing for sharing information according to the sport policy follow-up framework developed for the MINEPS 6. So these are the 5 actions which were, let me say, marked during the MINEPS, and each of them is very important. So this year, unfortunately, stopped many activities, and the Kazan Action Plan, including this. But anyhow, I believe we can go forward together to develop KAP and achieve all decisions which was made during our meeting. So this is briefly, Michael, thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure. And we're going to get back to you with some questions about the Kazan Action Plan. But let me now turn to Thomas. First, Thomas, let me congratulate you. Yesterday, you had a very successful Congress of State Parties, which I attended. Thomas, you lead a very critical international organization in Austria, in the International Anti-Corruption Academy. And I think part of the history and part of the responsibility of the Academy is indeed bringing together stakeholders from the business sector and the government sector, and of course from civil society. Talk to us a little bit about what, if any, plans you might have at the Academy to address this problem that we're facing today of the lack of trust in sport? We're not hearing you, Thomas.
Okay.
There you go.
I have unmuted. Thanks a lot. After so many months of virtual conferences, there's still technical gadgets. Let me just emphasize, Mike, you referred to our Assembly of Parties yesterday. I'm so happy to lead this organization, which is so strongly supported and, I may say, inspired by you and your work. And of course, I'm very happy to be on this panel led by you today.
Thank you.
You know, as you mentioned, our small organization, the Anti-Corruption Academy, International Anti-Corruption Academy in Vienna, it's the only organization, the only international organization with a mandate exclusively to fight corruption, holistically in all its aspects. And we are an academic institution, but we're also a research institution. And we are a technical assistance provider in the context of the implementation of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Thus, we are complementing the normative work of the UNODC and the United Nations here. And as such, we offer tailor-made courses and modules for judicial personnel from least developed countries to help them establish efficient anti-corruption legislation, eliminating impunity in their respective countries. And we're also providing technical assistance. We also believe that technical assistance provision and capacity building is very important to enable practitioners to build resilient and resistant and strong system against corruption, that corruption can be tackled efficiently on the basis of the rule of law. This is what we have in mind here. And then, of course, we bring together people. We are a networking institution, fostering dialogue, international cooperation activities between academicians, practitioners, civil society, national anti-corruption institutions, international organizations. So we are a platform bringing together different interests to raise awareness as the first step, and then to offer concrete technical assistance. Now, since the early beginning, IACA has been tackling various aspects of corruption in sports. In 2015, we organized 2 workshops on match fixing in football with Interpol. The purpose of these activities was to enhance awareness and increase knowledge on protecting the integrity of the game. Corruption in sport is also an important part of the curricula of our 2 master's programs that we offer. And it's also included in our flagship International Summer Academy. So to give you just a little, of course, but to give the audience some idea what we are and what we're aiming to. Corruption was until recently like this big shadow, too big to be fought, penetrating all our lives. But recently, the integrative platforms like the United Nations and also the OECD brought interests together and came up with legal frameworks, the implementation of which does enable us to open doors to start fighting corruption efficiently and strategically. And the UNCAC, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, is one of these instruments. And the implementation of it is therefore very crucial. In the context, of course, of what's going on now, we have this huge window of opportunity right now. First, corruption became part of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is like at the focus of the international community of states today. And with the fragile international and the increasingly unstable and fragile international institutions and systems, the UN is increasingly concentrating on implementing the key, what they have come up with. And the Sustainable Development Goals, negotiated and adopted by all UN member states, these 17 goals, which are the Agenda 2030, the recipe to make our world better, more equitable, more just, more livable for everybody, has one cross-cutting issue, and that's the fight against corruption. And this has many different dimensions, the ethic dimensions, but also, of course, the economic dimensions. With these enormous amounts of money siphoned away from productive economies, which cannot be compensated for. The fight against corruption is increasingly seen as a conditio sine qua non, this precondition to make progress. And corruption penetrates every field of us, and this very important field of our society, which is sports. And because corruption, as you know, is just destabilizing. It's taking transparency. It's influenced the well-being, the perception, the joy, the participation. It prevents inclusion. It distances. It has so many hidden costs, which we need to illuminate, to create a strong narrative, to go out with a strong message, to help our stakeholders understand that this fight has to be fought together, that it makes sense to fight it, that it makes sense to fight corruption. It's good for everybody. And if the systems are strengthened, and if impunity is excluded, then everybody will understand that it makes sense, and it's just a winner. So this would be just my entry into your question, but
well,
of course I'm looking forward to dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah. So Franco, are you seeing an increase in organized criminal activities in sports? And if so, why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, because we have seen the sport business system even more and more attracting factor for those organized crime and mafia's gangs that aim at infiltrating all the sectors of the civil society. Now, unfortunately, we have in Italy a good experience about the mafia penetration, particular areas in the south of Italy. Now, just to give you an idea, out of 10 cases I'm dealing with, 10 cases, 7 are related to the north of Italy and 3 to the south. There has been a complete change of the interest of mafia gangs into the penetration where there is money, where there are attractive and profitable activities. This is why sport has proven to be not immune at all. On the contrary, in some cases, I mentioned illegal match fixing, it is clear, illegal transactions, it is clear, but even, as I said before, when a mafia group, a mafia gang, wants to clean his face by buying a young sport club, by helping a young group of athletes to clean his face and to look as, I would say, a decent economic operator in that territory. This is the reason. The second reason, as Ambassador Stelzer just said, is the spreading of the corruption, also petty corruption. When we found, in some cases, young football players having been corrupted for having a tablet in return, betraying their club, condemning their club for a tablet or for a mobile phone. That gives the idea of the deep penetration of corruption into the sport activity. And following the what Ambassador Stelzer said, I mentioned the European Commission communication published in October, a month ago, where there are the 3 pillars on the rule of law in Europe. One of these 3 pillars is fight against corruption. Corruption as a whole, not only in sport, but as a SIGA, for example, we have launched an anti-sport corruption action plan, aiming at, I would say, assisting sport club, sport federation, sport entities in preventing from inside and with their associates any symptoms of corruption, because corruption is a phenomenon which is born, I would say, on the ground, as a petty corruption, increasing in level and in amount of money and becoming transnational corruption. So we have to act immediately. SIGA proposal exactly is that. We want to help the interested body, I would say, in a sports sector to prevent, first of all, and to accept what we call an independent system of verification. This independent system is chosen on a voluntary basis. We have been working on that, myself and our excellent CEO, Emmanuel Medeiros. On that is a system that each and every organization willing to do so accept and to help to give them all the indicators that are highlighting the symptoms in order to prevent and to eradicate. So, in my view, despite the fact that I have to deal with the infiltration where we found infiltration as a judge, as a SIGA chairman, I very much prefer to focus on prevention. Prevention through a verification preliminary system and an anti-corruption action plan, which is visionary. And lastly, we have made as a SIGA a very important proposal, since to fight against corruption and illegality, we need money. So we made a proposal. I hope that some leaders, head of state, head of government, or head of government will get it, maybe during the G20 Italian presidency. We have in Italy a well-advanced anti-mafia legislation. I give you an example. If I decide to confiscate huge, in some cases, assets of mafia, not only money, but properties, for example, there is a law allowing the judge to decide that asset, imagine a villa or a field which is cultivated to hide money laundering, can be dedicated for the good. I would say through a concession to an NGO fighting against mafia, or to a cooperative of young people that are transforming the property into a primary school. So where mafia use the property to commit crime, we use the same property for the good. We made a proposal. Why don't we think of a portion of the money confiscated for illegal transactions in the field of sport, illicit match fixing, to be reinvested for the early formation of young athletes and to create an international fund for sport integrity. So the idea is to reverse everything which is bad used by criminals into something which is reinvested for the good. This is the idea we launched at the SIGA. I hope that the G20 Italian presidency will get it as a suggestion.
Thank you, Franco. Azat, are you trying to take the KAP program throughout Russia? Has there been any other interest in any other cities within Russia in adopting this very worthwhile program? Azad, have I lost you?
I'm here. I'm here. Yeah, I think I'm sorry. Sorry. So actually, first of all, let me say that KAP is a key document for the future years to develop sport, to keep the integrity of the sport, to keep these main points which market in the KAP. So the Russian as a country and the Russian Ministry of Sport is going to give a lot of attention to develop this KAP. So unfortunately, we are a little bit late, let me say, to develop this plan in different reasons. But now we try to be more fast to give some new points and new movement for the KAP. The KAP is very important not only for international level, also for Russia, as a country, because you know the big country, thousands of kilometers, many regions, and different level of the development of the regions. So that is why they use some of the actions which are marketed in the KAP, also for develop physical culture and sport in our country. Of course, for the international level, it's also very important document, very important plan. So, and together with international sport community, we can also give new movement to save all key factors to develop sport, to save sport, especially now during this pandemic situation. And hopefully next year we will meet the Olympic Games, Summer Olympic Games, and other competitions, because this is a key competition for the athletes, and all of them training and preparing to participate for the Olympic Games. So hopefully the sport community keep this possibility for the athletes to participate, and we can see the high level competition, and doesn't matter what happened during this pandemic, and hopefully we will meet the finish of the pandemic soon. So this is briefly. I'm so sorry because time is going to finish. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas, I want to just follow up on something that Franco discussed, and something which the Academy is the beneficiary of. He talked about using the proceeds of criminal acts, to help benefit society. As some of you may know, Siemens had a scandal some years back. And as a result of that, in a settlement with the World Bank, created a fund. I think the fund originally was 100 million euros. And the Academy has applied, and successfully applied, for some of those proceeds, and indeed has been using the proceeds from that fund. My question to you is that the idea of using proceeds of ill-gotten gains for civil society and for reform is, I think, a solid one. One of the problems we're facing in sports is that there's a lack of resources and knowledge on the part of law enforcement and judiciary on how to deal with crimes related to sports. And I'm just wondering if the Academy were able to receive some funding, as SIGA might, for example, from ill-gotten gains, whether you could create a program to help better educate law enforcement and judiciary to be able to deal with crimes involving sports.
Mike, this is a very intriguing proposition, of course, and I was listening very carefully to the exposition of Mr. Frattini, which works very well in Italy. I'm aware of that, and I think it's a very practical and very, very efficient approach. Question of money, of course, is always there. You know, I don't want to make it the dominant question, but as we say in Austria, without money, no music. You know, so you need money to finance programs. And education, in my understanding, and from what I've learned also in my many years with the United Nations, is the key. You cannot impose solutions on anybody if they are not part of the solution, and if they do not share ownership of the proposal. So therefore, you always have to start with education. Now, we are an education institution, but we have been concentrated on academic education, you know, with our 2 master's programs, educating, capacity building for professionals, for practitioners in the field of anti-corruption. But of course, we can widen that dramatically, and we can widen the field. When I came into IACA half a year ago, you know, I had a very strong vision. I was looking at what IACA has built in the last 9 years since its inception. And these academic programs are very firm and very strong. They have produced about 3,000 alumni in 161 countries, which is great because all of these alumni are bridgeheads. They know exactly what we are doing, and they are enabled to work better in their environment. But we have to scale this up. So my ambition and my vision is that we need to train every future leader of the international system, diplomats, international managers, but also managers in the free market economy, in corporations. We have to offer them some basic anti-corruption training. First step, to help them understand these fine lines between tradition, generosity, negligence, and criminal behavior. And then help them to understand what to do with this understanding. So education is very important, and it has to start early. So I'm a total supporter of all educational approaches, and any money made available for that is very well used money. In fact, we are considering a master's program very much concentrating. We do already involve in our 2 master's programs, in our modules, corruption in sports aspects. But now I think there is a lot of demand to widen that and to verticalize it. And we have been considering conceptualizing a master's programs concentrating on corruption in sport. So this is something which will be demand driven, of course, and which we have to do with others, with other partners. You know.
Thank you, Thomas. I hate to interrupt, but I'm getting a red flag from the conference organizers saying that we're just about out of time. Thank you all for your wonderful interventions. And most of all, thank you to Mohammed Hanzab and Massimiliano from ICSS for not only bringing together these experts and for having this Securing Sports Conference, but keeping the world abreast of the importance of integrity, transparency, and accountability in sports. ICSS has never faltered in the years that's been in existence in pushing to bring back some of the purity that we all loved in sports. So thank you all, and thank you, ICSS.